Chapter 50-90. Yangxian, is this still Yangxian? Jian Wushuang, what kind of existence are you? Only bitterness was left in the young master's eyes. It seemed that from the beginning, he hadn't put Jian Wushuang in his eyes. Until the heavenly feast, the first battle to win the peach, Jian Wushuang almost got the final fairy peach with an unrivaled posture, and entered the eyes of all the emperors. From that date, it was only 20,000 years old, and he had grown to an existence that even Gongzi Jiao could not ignore. Jian Wushuang, if you are the emperor's son, how good it would be. The son was stunned. I can give everything that the son can't give you, including the blood of the emperor. At this moment, a timid voice sounded behind him. My lord, do you want to leave with us? The son corrected himself, looked at the immature emperor who was talking, shook his head slightly, and then continued to pay attention to everything that happened in the void. The immature disciple did not dare to stay too much, and hurried to the master Shu Tuo. We don't have to go anymore. The danger seems to have been resolved. Shu Tuo slowly got up, looked at the peaceful void, and let out a sigh of relief. Really solved. In the eternal extinguishment of nothingness, Nan Xian's chest was violently ups and downs, panting heavily, as if he could not believe that he had solved the black robe. Jian Wushuang's situation was not much better than him, and the moment of release made him almost fall. The black robe's body without any backhand strength made Jian Wushuang feel unbelievable. He didn't believe that the black robe was directly extinguished in this way. Could it be that he will recover as before? He seemed to realize something, and subconsciously looked at the place where the black robe had died. Only then did he discover that the silky dark purple mist had condensed again. Jian Wushuang was shocked, and immediately blasted a great light, trying to completely destroy the mist, but to his surprise, it had no effect. How could this happen? Nan Xian also noticed, stepped back and hurriedly released Yanli to kill. But the silky dark purple haze seems to have the ability to nibble and swallow the power, and the power is not affected at all. With the formation of the vortex, the embryonic form of a body appeared again. That body is the black robe that was bombarded. How is it possible? How can this guy be immortal? Nan Xian yelled, then blasted the body like crazy. This time, the reunited black robe didn't seem to be as slow as before. Facing Jian Wushuang and Nan Xian, he slowly raised his palm. The broad palm suddenly opened his 5 fingers, blasting out an unimaginable dark purple beam of light. All this happened so fast that Nan Xian couldn't avoid it at all, and could only watch his fairy body being penetrated. But the next moment, Jian Wushuang suddenly stood in front of Nan Xian. A giant glow burst out, and the boundless potential energy that was enough to destroy any cosmic realm erupted completely in front of Jian Wushuang's chest. Zhu Tianyi Xian exudes a bright light, but the dark purple beam of light unexpectedly blasted into the only crack in Zhu Tianyi Xian. Jian Wushuang only felt that his chest was broken in an instant, and the peculiar energy directly shattered his fairy body, and the blood spewed out. Tens of thousands of meters of dark purple light penetrated his chest and appeared in the eternal emptiness. What? All the disciples were shocked and shouted. Shu Tuo trembled in disbelief. The black robe that had died down reappeared, and the shot directly released the aura of destruction, almost instantly causing Jian Wushuang to fall into a situation of life and death. Gongzi Jiao was also completely shocked. His body moved, his face was in disbelief. The situation that had been almost foregone turned out in an instant. The black robe, like an immortal nightmare, appears again. Divine blood spilled into the void. Jian Wushuang's immortal body was completely shattered and fell back into Nan Xian's arms. Hurry up. He tried hard to speak to Nan Xian with the last trace of strength. Nan Xian nodded vigorously, then desperately held Jian Wushuang to flee. This time, the black robe was no longer as dull as before, and when he noticed that they were running away, he immediately followed. Boom. The dark purple light beam exploded in the dying void. Nan Xian was able to escape, but he had no power to fight again. He embraced Jian Wushuang and couldn't escape the black robe's pursuit. Facing Nan Xian, who was fleeing in a panic, Haipao raised his palm again, and in an instant, thousands of dark purple rays of light turned into a big net covering the sky. The entire void of nihilism is almost covered, and Nan Xian is inevitable. The sun frowned and frowned. He had been hunted down by this situation before. If Jian Wushuang hadn't helped him, he would have disappeared. At the moment, if there is no help from outside, Nan Xian and Jian Wushuang will never escape. He was hesitating and seemed to be doing some kind of struggle inside. In the end, he didn't help, but tilted his head to the other side. Facing the dense net that covered the sky, even if Nan Xian was unwilling, he was unable to return to the sky. The next moment, but the sudden change. With the only remaining sacred mountain in Sansuan Mountain as the center, a mysterious black enchantment that can cover the sky and sun suddenly appears in. This black enchantment directly covered Nan Xian's figure. And the dense net that covered the sky followed closely, but slammed into the barrier, and then crash. Nan Xian was shocked, but before he had time to think about it, he directly held Jian Wushuang and landed on the top of the sacred mountain of Sansuan Mountain. A group of disciples hurriedly lifted Jian Wushuang up and placed them on by his generous and kind back. "Little friend, he will be fine, you guys go quickly, here I will withstand it," Nan Xian said with a trembling, and then stuffed the last emperor pin pill in his arms into Jian Wushuang's mouth. Seeing this scene, Gongzi Jiao's expression changed again and again. He understood that if he didn't leave now, he couldn't leave even if he wanted to leave later. Outside the black barrier, the black robe was attacking frantically. Under his crazy offensive, the barrier was already full of cracks. When the sun saw it, he was ready to leave. Almost at the same time, a voice with supreme anger resounded. "It's really annoying, it makes the old man dead and uneasy." The craftsman Shu Tuor was startled, and then his eyes rounded to the extreme, as if he had witnessed something impossible. The whole sacred mountain began to tremble violently, as if the supreme Li Tiandao was born. Then there was the pure sound of swords that drew 9 heavens forever and was breathtaking. With this black enchantment as the center, an unimaginable shadow descended. He was wearing a black robe, with real anger in his true eyes, as if he was crushing the ages like a sword, sharp to the extreme. He is above the 9th rank Dayan Immortal and is the peak Dayan Immortal. At the same time, he is also a sword spirit. Chapter 5091. Only when weapons have souls and long swords have spirits can they lead to a deeper realm. And the sword spirit that can grow into the pinnacle Dayan Immortal is the only one who rests in the sword grave of Sansuan Mountain. He, who had been inevitably declining, unexpectedly reappeared at this moment, and with an endless momentum, he directly crushed the black robe. The mysterious black barrier shattered, and the black-robed old man as a sword spirit waved his hand and patted the black robe heavily. In an instant, it was like a mountain and a sea of dust disappearing forever. The supreme palm directly smashed the black robe into powder. Long support as strong as rank 9 Dayan Immortal, even broken Xianyuan did not erase the black robe, but at this moment, the black robe was slapped and turned into powder. This scene made all the disciples of Sankunshan, including Jian Wushuang who had just awakened, and Gongzi Jiao widened their eyes. Crush, kill in seconds. It was like the black robe of an immortal nightmare, but was drawn directly into powder at this moment, which made Jian Wushuang incredulous. But things did happen, and the black robe once again became a fan. Humph! The unimaginable phantom snorted coldly, then stood with his hand held, turned and walked towards the sacred mountain of Sansuan Mountain. With each step, the huge phantom shrank, until it reached the Sansuan Mountain, it had become a normal figure. Nan Xian was so shocked that he couldn't speak, watching him stammered, "Aren't you gone?" As soon as he said this, all the disciples, including Gongzi Jiao, changed their expressions and did not dare to breathe. You must know that this is the supreme and powerful person who can slap a black robe to death. If you say this, you will inevitably become angry. However, the horrible scene in the imagination did not appear, and the black-robed old man was a little annoyed. "I wanted to die directly, but the outside world was so shocked that I couldn't bear it. Then I came back to life and killed the guy. That's it." Nan Xian's mouth twitched. "Fortunately, you wake up, otherwise you won't see us. Just such a small bug, turned this place upside down?" The black-robed old man deplored his unsatisfactory expression. "Is Darciu already weakened to this point?" All the disciples did not dare to speak, and Jian Wushuang, who had recovered from his near death, laughed bitterly at the words. Hugh said that they couldn't do it, even if it was also the long support from the Wangu era. It ended up tragically. After a grievance, the black-robed old man noticed Jian Wushuang, who was in the body, and hurriedly walked towards him. Little friend, what did you do? Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly when he heard the words, let the predecessors read the joke, the kid is invincible. Hearing this, the black-robed old man glared, you are an immortal. Although you are invincible, you are still moving forward. With the old man's posture in the past, these few rats with hidden heads and exposed tails, why dare not to step forward? After he finished speaking, he looked directly at Shu Tuo, Nan Xian, and young Master Jiao. The young man took a few steps back subconsciously. He didn't dare to say that the aura exuded by the black-robed old man was too domineering, making everyone who heard it silent. At the same time, he felt a very familiar aura in the black-robed old man, but he did not act rashly, but chose to silence. Nan Xian quickly explained, don't look at me, I have been fighting side by side with my little friend from beginning to end. The black-robed old man snorted angrily, and then looked at Shu Tuo, little guy, come and explain to the old man, why the little friend alone was hit hard. What did you eat? Shu Tuo was dumb, and then smiled bitterly. Master you have to know that even if we were tied together before, it would never hurt the black robe at all. Just not long ago, a 9th rank Great Yang Immortal was lost here. Hearing this, the black-robed old man was shocked. How could it be possible for the 9th rank Dian Immortal? Jian Wushuang opened his mouth and said in a condensed voice, Senior, that's true, the fallen 9th rank Great Yang Immortal is named Chang Fu. The black-robed old man said in disbelief, Chang Fu, that dumb little guy? All Yangtzeans twitch at the corners of their mouths, and can call a strong person who has come out of the ancient times as a dumb little guy. How much qualifications and background do they need? And it seemed that the old man in black robe had already known Chang Fu a long time ago. It's a pity that this honest little guy survived the catastrophe, but he didn't expect to be buried in this unknown place. The black-robed old man seemed a little confused, causing melancholy. The galaxy turns, after all, it is endless. The so-called immortality, from the moment of proving the Tao and gaining the Tao, there is absolutely no possibility of a good death. Even the ninth rank Dian Immortal, or even the peak Dian Immortal, rarely ends well. They are already above the Tao of Heaven, and they can even modify any Tao of Heaven at will. For them, the fate is already endless. The endless fate is like a cage, let all the immortals sink in it. What can't be restrained by the fate of heaven, is it not a cage of its own? Haipao said slowly, well, the little guy left, and the old man has found revenge for him, so he can close his eyes. Since there is nothing more to do here, the old man went on to die. Jian Wushuang and the others shot again. This old man in black robes, whose origin is a sword spirit, seems to always be so independent and free and easy to do things. He went out to kill the black robe directly, and then he continued to prepare for his death. Little guy, never see you again. The black robe old man looked at Jian Wushuang and smiled. Senior, cherish it. Jian Wushuang solemnly arched his hands. At this moment, young Master Jiao, who had not spoken for a long time, suddenly said, this senior, we seem to have seen him. The black-robed old man turned around and looked at the son with some doubts. Are you? The son Jiao smiled slightly, then arched his hands. This seat, the junior, is the emperor under the true Wuyang seat. The emperor under the seat of Emperor Zhen Wuyang? The black-robe old man suddenly looked very excited. The galaxy has changed, and many Chinese have not seen you. Yang, you have grown so big. The old man hugged you personally. Wait. Yang. The young master's expression of complacency still froze on his face, and he realized that the black-robe old man seemed to have admitted the wrong person. Seeing his expression like a throat, Jian Wushuang couldn't help showing a smile. Reluctantly squeezing out a stiff smile, young master said, going back to senior, this seat is not young master Yang, but young master second emperor. This time, it was his turn to be embarrassed by the black-robe old man. He stopped on the spot and narrowed his eyes. Oh, I am confused and confused. The old man's eyes are clumsy and he can't distinguish between the emperor and the second emperor. Don't blame it. The sun twitched the corners of his mouth and could only signal that there was nothing wrong. Chapter 5092. But then, the black-robed old man continued without knowing it, "Let me ask the second emperor, how is the great emperor now?" Gong Zijiao's face almost became the bottom of a black pot, and the corners of his mouth twitched constantly. He said in a tone of almost gritted teeth, "Very, very good." Hearing this, the old man in black robe laughed. It's so good, since the emperor's son is innocent, the old man can leave without worry." "No, you can't go, senior," he hurriedly said. "Changfu was once the elder under the seat given to me by the emperor, and now he has died in order to protect me, and there is no elder by my side. So, please seniors to become my elders." After the prince had finished correcting the words, he sincerely looked at the black-robe old man. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly. After talking so much, and going around such a big circle, he originally wanted the black-robed old man to replace Changfu and become the elder under his seat. It has to be said that Gongzi Jiao does have a certain degree of city government and courage, and can obtain identification with his identity in an extremely passive situation. I am afraid that the black-robed old man will eventually become his elder. For a while, Jian Wushuang faintly worried. If the black-robed old man joins the camp of young Master Jiao, I am afraid that the battle between the emperor and the son will be even more terrible. He would never forget that the alliance of emperors and sons headed by Gongzi Jiao had almost wiped out Xiaodijun. Just when Jian Wushuang was suspicious, the black-robed old man spoke and said in a calm voice, "Second emperor, forgive the old man for his life. After that ancient catastrophe, the old man has irretrievably declined. Being able to exist is unimaginable, so the old man can't stay by your side." The son was startled, apparently unaware that the black-robed old man would refuse so simply. He hurriedly bowed his hands in a salute. "Please also seniors must agree." The emperor's salute is unthinkable in the big division domain, and the black-robe old man has an inextricable relationship with Zhen Wuyang emperor, and it is almost impossible not to agree. However, the ceremony did not go on. The black-robe old man directly stretched out his hand and waved the son to straighten his figure. Then he said quite solemnly, "The emperor should have the prestige of the emperor, and the place where the heaven is located, except for the emperor, does not need to give courtesy. The old man is indeed declining irretrievably, and cannot assist any emperor. Please do not read the second emperor." Gongzi Jiao still wanted to say something, but the black-robed old man no longer gave him a chance to speak. He turned around and walked towards Jian Wushuang, and said in a voice that only they could hear, "If the little friend can see Yu Chang again, tell him that the old friend is gone, don't read it. Also, let him find time to find another sword, no sword will not work after all." When Jian Wushuang heard this, a light flashed in his eyes. Until then, he didn't know that he had made a mistake, including Gongzi Jiao. That is, the old man in black robe was once Shen Wuyang's right-hand man. It turns out that he is not. And Jian Wushuang also realized at this time that Yu Chang also used a sword, but his Morching longsword was condensed by air, and it was almost the same as Jian Wushuang's invisible sword. The reason Jian Wushuang used the invisible sword was because his Tailuo divine sword was destroyed, and there was no sword that could carry Wushuang's sword. And Yu Chang also used the invisible sword. It must be because the longsword was destroyed. As the true peak of the great emperor, the black-robed old man who is also a sword spirit, he must be a supreme sword that is beyond bondage. And besides Zhen Wuyang, only Yu Chang could be worthy of this sword. A vast domain, a domain with two emperors. Such a secret thing. I am afraid that apart from those veterans who survived the war of Wanggu era, only Jian Wushuang knew. Yu Chang is also an emperor. This sounds incredible, but it is true. And the black-robed old man who is the pinnacle Dayan immortal is indeed qualified to be called the Emperor Sword. Only Yu Chang is qualified to be his master. This can be seen in the black-robe old man calling himself Yu, and the gift of Jian Wushuang with an inscribed Moqing Lingjing. After saying this, the old man in black robe smiled warmly and reached out and tapped on his wrist. Jian Wushuang understood it, and subconsciously looked at his wrist. There, wearing a simple and powerful sea bracelet. Bracelet, is it related to Uncle Yu? He shook his head for a moment. The memory from the borderless sea to the upper-facing heavenly court has been fragmented. Jian Wushuang can't recall any clues that have memories at all, and naturally can't know the origin of this Songhai bracelet. Well, the matter is over. The old man will wait for death. The black-robed old man laughed, and then he was about to leave. But at this time, Jian was double-faced color-changed, and then he looked at him with a wry smile. "I'm afraid, senior, can't leave yet, that guy has appeared again." As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the master craftsmen Xu Tuo and Nan Xian suddenly changed, and they almost said in the same way, "How is it possible?" 3 times, it really died out 3 times, but all 3 times recovered again. This is beyond imagination and is a fundamentally impossible thing. Even if it is Jian Wushuang, felt a deep sense of powerlessness for the black robe that came out of the bone armor of the sky. Is he really immortal? Immortality is immortal. This concept is too terrifying, almost impossible to exist. Even Jian Wushuang's immortal body could not be resurrected in such a short time as Black Robe. But Haipao did it. Even in the hands of Pinnacle Dian Immortal, he survived and resurrected. The black-robed old man obviously hadn't thought about this situation either, and his brow was slightly frowned. "You wait, I'll kill him completely." After he finished speaking, his figure swept directly into the void of vanity. The unparalleled sound Mang trembles, making the dying and nothingness turbulent. The mighty power belonging to the Pinnacle Dian Immortal fully emerged at this moment. The black robe was still resurrected at the place where it had previously been destroyed, and the dark purple brilliance burst out from under the wide black robe. "Court death." The black-robed old man snorted angrily, and the giant sound radiated 9 times. Then one party covered the sky with a big palm facing the black robe. At this moment, Tian Dao was trembling. Haipao seemed to feel something, and looked up at the void. He finally stopped being indifferent, and directly reached out to fight. The huge amount of dark purple light beam seemed to be enough to divide the void into 2, carrying the boundless force into the void. The big palm covering the sky condensed from the order of the heavens, and the great avenue of the ages came down. The 2 collided, an immense explosion exploded, and the terrible death blast trembled to 9 days and 10 places. On the top of Sansuan Mountain's only sacred mountain, Jian Wushuang stared at this scene. Then he released his own power without any hesitation, and enveloped the entire sacred mountain under the barrier. Chapter 5093. In this barrier, all the disciples looked at Jian Wushuang nervously. Before they knew it, they had pinned their hopes on this young man Yangxian. Seeing the back of Jian Wushuang, who released the strength to stabilize the enchantment, Gong Zijiao's eyes were cold and resentful. He didn't understand why the strongest would have good ties with Jian Wushuang. It would be fine if it was Yangxian, but it happened that Dianxian appeared endlessly beside him. Even rank 6 and rank 9 Dianxian could mix with him. Damn it, how did this guy do it? The sun was almost mad with jealousy. Jian Wushuang, don't be proud, this seat will stomp you on your feet one day. This time, the big palm covering the sky covered by the black robe old man no longer worked. As the light and shadow shattered, the big palm covering the sky was also directly divided. The dark purple bizarre huamang crazily erode the power and the way of heaven. It was actually a blow from the black robe old man. Okay. The big palm covering the sky shattered into billions of streams of light spilling into the void, and the black robe elder was puzzled, and the black robe that had just recovered seemed to be stronger than before. The first fight did not cause any serious damage to the black robe, which made him begin to solemnly. The black robe elder, who has experienced countless battles since the ancient times, also felt the black robe very different at this moment. He couldn't feel the flow of any derivative force from the body of the black robe, not even the slightest wave of derivative force. This makes the black robe old man extremely strange. Yanli is the fundamental power of the entire big division, even the ultimate evangelism. No monk, or even Yuxian, can get rid of the evangelical power, even for the emperor. But right now, the black robe completely did not drive Yanli. The dark purple huamang he used was extremely peculiar and fundamentally different from Yanli. For a while, the black-robed old man had many thoughts, but he was quickly forgotten. The danger of living is worth thinking about. while the danger of death is not called danger. The void oscillated, and the heavenly order shattered again. The black-robed old man stepped away, and he stretched out his right palm and pointed like a sword, slashing towards the black robe. Like the immortal black robe, it seemed to be more agile than before. Facing the supremely powerful black robe old man, he actually knew how to avoid his edge. Struggle. At the same time, Jian Wushuang, who was standing on the top of the sacred mountain watching the battle, looked at the black robe solemnly. He noticed that the black robe seemed to be adapting to it, and at the same time stronger than before. Could it be that without touching the source, every time you die, you will get stronger? Jian Wushuang was thinking, and at the same time faintly worried about the black robe old man. The reason why he has been talking about death-seeking is most likely that the situation of the fairy body has really reached the end of the force. Under this premise, even if the black-robed old man is pinnacle Dian immortal, he is very likely to fall into a passive state. In the void of eternal extinguishment and nothingness, a more violent battle broke out. As a black-robed old man who was already at the peak of the ancient times, his background is simply unimaginable. He can wave his hand at will and he can create thousands of chains of heavenly order. Chains of order from the heavens, like a broken ancient dragon, emerged from the void and twisted toward the black robe. There are too many hesitations about the chains of heavenly order, and he can't avoid it at all, and he is instantly entangled in it. Looking at the ancient voices, every chain of the heavenly order trembles at this moment, and a series of dark cyan dense patterns appear. At this moment, centered on the black robe bound by the entanglement, 999 chains of heavenly order broke out at the same time. The luck contained in every chain of heaven order is the full blow of the black robe old man. The 999 chains of heaven order are 990 full blows. The emptiness that becomes eternal and nihilistic is therefore discolored. The supreme air luck that belonged to the peak Dian immortal broke out completely, and the black robe that was entangled in the body and couldn't get out of it began to shatter directly under the suppression of this air luck. Obviously, the body of the black robe couldn't bear so many chain lashes of the order of the heavens at all, and fine cracks quickly formed. And the black robe old man came to the black robe at this moment. His face was solemn, as if he had noticed something, and he said directly, "You are not a fairy in the Great Division. What is your origin, the remnants of the heavens from the past?" The black robe did not speak, and the body under the wide black robe seemed to be broken at any time. The black-robed old man narrowed his eyes, and he realized that even he couldn't see the face under the black-robed hood at all. From beginning to end, he was extremely secretive. "What on earth are you from?" The black-robe old man repeated it again. This time, Haipao slowly raised his head and looked at him. At such a close distance, he couldn't see the face under his hood, only the dark purple haze, which was quite strange. This black robe, who walked out of the bone armor with the sky character pattern and whose identity is all mysterious, finally spoke. The hoarse voice seemed to be separated by countless years and times. "Peep at the ciphertext, die." The black robe old man condensed his brows. "What ciphertext, say?" "Peep at the ciphertext, die." Haipao repeated it again. He suddenly raised his head and looked directly at the black robe old man. Two black lights shot out from under the hood like long swords. Unprepared, the black-robed old man stared at him, and there was a moment of dazzling. At this moment, under the black robe, a purple glow burst out like a sword. This purple light pierced the black robe old man's chest fiercely through the chains of heavenly order. In an instant, the 990 chains of heaven's order broke down, and the supreme luck was going crazy. "Senior!" Jian Wushuang yelled and rushed to the black robe old man without hesitation. Being penetrated by Zimang's chest, even Pinnacle Dian's chest was broken at this moment. "You wanna die." The invisible sword enveloping the red-gold Xuanhe pattern had already condensed. Jian Wushuang stepped on the void, and suddenly threw the invisible sword in his hand towards the black robe. At this moment, even the monstrous dark purple haze was retreating. Boom! The blazing invisible sword also pierced the chest of the black robe, and the purest Wushuang swordsmanship exploded in his body. The black robe, which was already densely covered with cracks, could no longer withstand this degree of fluctuation, and it was broken into powder. Jian Wushuang didn't even look at the place where the black robe body fell, and raised his hand to protect the black robe old man who was falling. Senior, how are you doing? The black-robed old man looked pale, and his supreme luck quickly disappeared from his broken chest. He said in a hoarse voice, "The situation seems to be a little uncomfortable, and now my chest pain is a bit severe." Chapter 5094. Although Jian Wushuang was anxious, he quickly calmed down. He fixed his eyes, and in front of the broken chest of the black-robe old man, there was a lingering dark purple brilliance flowing slowly. Under his thoughts, Jian Wushuang quickly took out 2 DI pin pills. One was stuffed into the mouth of the black-robed old man, and the other was crushed directly to the wound. At the entrance of the pill, the black-robed old man stared suddenly, which belonged solely to the power of the Emperor Pin Pill, which was so powerful that it could not be vainly stated, even the pinnacle Dian Immortal was enough to fully recover. At the entrance of the pill, feeling the extremely powerful medicinal effect, the black-robe old man quickly closed his eyes and began to adjust his breath. But Jian Wushuang didn't dare to neglect, and stretched out his hand to pull out the smog and dust that covered the wound. Nanhe craftsman Shu Tuor and others also rushed to release Yanli together to protect the black-robe old man. Time passed by, and his trauma slowly stabilized. Finally, the black-robed old man slowly opened his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang with bright eyes. Then excitedly said with a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Good boy, where did you get this pill? How can it taste the same as the old man stealing it back then?" Jian Wushuang was full of black lines, a little messy. He never thought that the first thing the black-robed old man would wake up was actually saying this. Immediately afterwards, the black-robed old man looked proud again. "Good boy, it seems that you have given the old guy's nest." The corners of his mouth twitched. "Senior, it seems you don't hurt anymore." Speaking of this, the black-robed old man is considered a serious face. "The pain doesn't hurt anymore, but that guy pushed me one more step toward death." Jian Wushuang knew that his words were true, and he was inevitably declining, because his luck was too severe and could not be condensed at all and could only be released. Coupled with this battle, it pushed the black-robed old man to his death. Well, now that this matter is over, the old man will continue to wait for death. The black-robed old man uttered his mantra and completely put aside life and death. However, just as his words fell, his complexion suddenly changed, and his gaze also looked into the sky far away. "No, that group of guys are here too." Jian Wushuang instantly became vigilant, but before he could speak, the black-robed old man hurriedly roared, "Little guy, what about the spar I gave you earlier? Run out and let the old man go in and hide." Jian Wushuang did so, and after taking out the black diamond crystal from the boyang bottle, the black-robe old man plunged directly into it and disappeared. He was wary and wondering, who was the one who would make the black-robed old man so jealous? In the next moment, from the depths of the endless void, a magnificent and supreme luck appeared, covering the sky. These lucks are not just one, but there are dozens of them. "Come back." Nan Xian was about to be tossed feebly. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly, and he felt the magnificent luck that covered the sky, and he did not carry any horrible killing intent. He thought to himself, could it be someone from heaven? It seems to be, to confirm his conjecture, a total of 10 roads carrying the light wheels of Yanli, carrying the treasures of supreme luck, stepped into the air. Really come from heaven? Jian Wushuang frowned, and soon realized that it must have been the aura of destruction emanating from the sky that had disturbed the heavenly court, so he sent the veteran to investigate. But in a short while, the 10 treasures came here. Their faces are majestic, full of photographs. With their arrival, the unspeakable order of heaven was reconstructed, becoming an eternal void of nothingness and beginning to stabilize. Everyone is careful. These people are all celestial elders. The craftsman Shu Tuor reminded in a low voice, his eyes solemn. So this is the veteran of heavenly court. Nan Xian whispered thoughtfully. And Gongzi Jiao was completely relieved. As the son of the emperor, there is no elder who is closer to the heavens than him. Headed by the 10 treasures, is a glaring figure, clean face without need and full of cold breath. He took a step forward, his gaze slowly swept across Jian Wushuang and the others, and after staying on the figures of Jian Wushuang and Gongzi Jiao for a moment, he withdrew his gaze again. Who did it here? Angrily asked in a cold voice. Unimaginable oppression followed. Rank 9 Dian Immortal. Jian Wushuang first determined that these veterans who have survived from the Wangu era to the present are all 9th rank Dian Immortal, and there is even a pinnacle Dian Immortal. In the face of these terrible existences, wanting to resist is sheer nonsense. At this moment, all were silent. The cause of this devastation was too complicated. The black robe of the initiator had completely disappeared, and it was impossible to dialectically. What's more, the heavenly court is not a good person, and if it causes such damage to devotion, it may be restrained by the heavenly court. This was Jian Wushuang's worry, so he didn't intend to speak. And Nan Xian also shook his head and looked around, with an unaware expression. The craftsman Shu Tuo also gritted his teeth and remained silent. He knew that such terrible damage had been caused to the heavens. Once found by the heavens, Yu Kanshu www.ukanshu.com would inevitably be exiled to a deserted place for years. At this time, the son who had not spoken to correct, took a step forward slowly. Zhenyao Xianjun, I. Without finishing a sentence, the angry figure called Zhenyao Xianjun directly interrupted him, and said coldly, "Your Highness, did I let you speak?" The son suppressed the sound, his face turned blue and red, the anger in his eyes flashed away, and then he returned to the original place. Xianjun Zhenyao continued to patrol, and finally stopped on Jian Wushuang, who was watching his nose and his heart. "Jian Wushuang, tell me what's going on here." Jian Wushuang's figure stiffened slightly, rather helpless. He didn't know why this Zhenyao Xianjun knew his name, but he could faintly guess some of the connections. After pondering for a while, he said, "I originally came here with my companions to experience and visit the senior master craftsman by the way, but some unexpected big changes have taken place. An evil object suddenly arrived here and began to wreak havoc, and it was quickly destroyed. In order to prevent the world from being destroyed, the senior master craftsman and I took action together and began to resist the evil object. But the evil thing is too cruel, we are not his opponents at all. Just when we are all invincible and are about to die, the evil thing suddenly fled from here, and just after that, you are here. Now that I think about it, the evil thing suddenly fled, it must be because of fear of the supreme luck of the immortals, and thus quickly fled." After speaking, Jian Wushuang sighed in relief. With these words, while dripping water, he slapped another wave of flattery from the celestial elders, which made Nan Xian a thumbs up in secret. Chapter 5095 Guardian of the Secret Text. In this realm, all disciples watched Jian Wushuang with intense anticipation. Unbeknownst to them, they had already placed all their hopes on this young Yang immortal. As they watched Jian Wushuang stabilize the barrier with his Yang power, Prince Jai's gaze grew cold and resentful. He could not understand why the most powerful individuals were all friendly with Jian Wushuang. If it were just Yang immortal, it would be one thing, but even 6 and 9 revolutions Grand Yang immortals seemed to flock to him. Damn it, how did this guy manage to do it? Prince Ju was consumed by jealousy. Jian Wushuang, don't get too cocky. One day, I'll crush you beneath my feet. This time, the all-encompassing palm that descended from the black-robed elder failed to have the same effect. With shattered light and shattered shadows, the palm was directly dispersed. A strange, dark purple radiance aggressively consumed the Yang immortal power and even defied the heavens, withstanding the black-robed elder's attack. As the sky-breaking palm shattered into countless streams of light in the void, the black-robed elder looked puzzled. The previously weakened black-robed figure now seemed even more formidable. Their first confrontation hadn't inflicted any significant damage on the black-robed figure, causing the elder to grow wary. The black-robed elder, who had experienced countless battles since the ancient era, now sensed something entirely different about the black-robed figure. He could not sense any flow of Yang immortal power from the black-robed figure, not even the slightest ripple of it. This left the black-robed elder extremely perplexed. Yang power was the fundamental force of the entire Great Sai region, even the ultimate force of the Grand Yang immortal realm. No cultivator, not even emperors, could escape the influence of Yang power, let alone Yang immortals. But now, This black-robed figure appeared to have completely and utterly avoided using yang power. The strange dark purple radiance he emitted was unique and fundamentally distinct from yang immortal power. For a moment, the black-robed elder entertained many thoughts, but he quickly pushed them aside. There was only value in contemplating when one was in danger of losing their life, and there was no danger in death. The void trembled, and the order of the heavens shattered once more. The black-robed elder moved through the air, extending his right palm with finger-like blades, striking toward the black-robed figure. The seemingly indestructible black-robed figure appeared even more agile than before. Faced with the supremely powerful black-robed elder, he somehow managed to avoid the full force of the attack. The fierce battle raged on. At the same time, Jian Wushuang, who stood atop the divine mountain, gazed intently at the figure in the black-robed figure. He could sense that the black-robed figure was adapting to the surroundings and growing even stronger than before. Could it be that without touching the source, each death makes one stronger? Jian Wushuang pondered out loud, all the while harboring concerns for the old man in the black-robed figure. The old man's constant mention of seeking death may very well have indicated that the condition of his immortal body had truly reached its last stand. In this situation, even if the black-robed elder was a peak Grand Yang immortal, he might find himself at a disadvantage. A more intense battle erupted within the eternal void, becoming a relentless clash. The black-robed elder, who had been a peak Grand Yang immortal since ancient times, possessed an unfathomable foundation. He could casually conjure thousands of chains of heavenly Tao with a mere wave of his hand. Countless chains of heavenly Tao, resembling ancient colossal dragons, emerged from the void and entwined around the black-robed figure. There were simply too many of these chains of heavenly Tao for him to avoid, and in an instant, he found himself ensnared by them. Buzz! A resounding roar echoed through the ancient heavens, and in that moment, each chain of celestial order trembled, giving rise to intricate ink-blue patterns. At this moment, with the black-robed figure at its center, 999 chains of heavenly Tao simultaneously erupted with unparalleled force. The destiny contained within each chain of celestial order was equivalent to the black-robed elder's full-powered strike. 999 chains of heavenly Tao meant 999 full-powered strikes. Even the eternal void of endless annihilation was perturbed by this. The unparalleled fate energy of a peak Grand Yang immortal erupted completely, and the black-robed figure, bound and unable to escape, began to shatter under the crushing force of this fate energy. It was quite evident that the body beneath the black-robed figure couldn't withstand the relentless lashings of the heavenly order chains, rapidly developing fine cracks. At this moment, the old man in the black-robed figure arrived in front of the black-robed figure. His expression grew solemn, as if he had sensed something. He spoke directly, "You don't belong to the Great Sai region. Who are you really, and what is your origin? A remnant of the ancient heavenly court?" The black-robed figure remained silent, and it seemed that their body under the wide black-robed figure was on the verge of breaking apart at any moment. The old man in the black-robed figure narrowed his eyes. He could not even see the face beneath the hood, not even when it was himself attempting to do so. Throughout, this figure remained enigmatic to the extreme. "Who are you, really?" the old man repeated. This time, the black-robed figure slowly raised their head to gaze at him. Even at such close proximity, their face beneath the hood remained hidden. All that could be seen was layer upon layer of dark purple mist, which was rather peculiar. Finally, the black-robed figure, who emerged from the heaven-patterned bone armor and whose identity was shrouded in mystery, spoke. Their hoarse voice seemed to have traversed countless ages and eras. "One who gazes upon the secret text shall perish." The black-robed elder furrowed his brow. "What secret text? Speak." "One who gazes upon the secret text shall perish." The phrase was repeated once more, and the figure suddenly raised their head, locking eyes with the old man in the black-robed figure. Two jet-black rays shot out from beneath the hood like elongated swords. Caught off guard, the old man momentarily lost focus as they stared back. In that very moment, a sword-like purple radiance burst forth from beneath the black-robed figure and pierced the old man's chest. In an instant, the 999 heavenly Tao chains shattered, and the fate energy vanished rapidly. "Senior!" Jian Wushuang shouted, without any hesitation, as he lunged toward the old man in the black-robed figure. Even the chest of a peak Grand Yang immortal like the old man was shattered by the purple radiance. You seek death. The invisible sword, enveloped in blazing golden divine patterns, had already materialized, and Jian Wushuang, with his feet suspended in the void, hurled the invisible sword towards the black-robed figure. At this moment, even the overwhelming dark purple mist retreated. Boom! The incandescent, burning invisible sword also pierced through the black-robed figure's chest, and the purest form of the Wushuang sword Dao erupted within. The already heavily cracked black-robed figure couldn't withstand such an impact, and it shattered into fragments. Jian Wushuang did not look at where the black-robed figure had fallen. He raised his hand and caught the falling old man. "Senior, are you all right?" The black-robed elder's face turned pale, and the supreme fate energy quickly dissipated from his shattered chest. In a hoarse voice, he said, "The situation seems a bit dire. My chest is hurting quite badly now." Chapter 5096. Jian Wushuang nodded his head hurriedly. "I also ask Xianjun to take action as soon as possible. This evil thing is too shocking to the world. In order to prevent future troubles, please do it quickly. Destroy. The old man can't be killed naturally. He has to be caught alive and handed over to the emperor." Zhenyao Xianjun made a decision, and then looked at the black robe again. Confused. Jian Wushuang shook his head, but he could no longer attract the attention of the veterans. Facing the black robe, the 10 Wangu veterans who walked out of the heavenly court released their own treasures. 10 veterans of the ancient times, 10 nine-turn great Yangxian, boundless luck directly in the nirvana, forming the supreme luck. This kind of luck is even beyond the scope of comprehension. Even Dian Immortal is like dust under this kind of supreme luck. Emperor's luck. Jian Wushuang was startled slightly. Looking at the sky-covering luck, he quickly understood. The reason why this kind of supreme luck is extremely terrifying is because there is the flow of Emperor's luck in it. The so-called Emperor's luck is the supreme thing, flowing in all things invisible, only the Emperor can control. As the elders and immortals who have followed the Emperor since the ancient times, although they cannot control the Emperor's luck, they often accompany the Emperor's side, and they will naturally be moistened by the Emperor's luck. After endless years, the luck of these elders and immortals naturally carried more or less the luck of emperors. Under this supreme atmosphere, all immortals tremble. There was the birth of the Qi luck that was pressing against the heavenly Tao, turning into branches and tangling around the black robe. It is foreseeable that once war starts, it will inevitably be even more tragic and terrifying. Jian Wushuang swallowed his throat, and subconsciously shifted his figure. If it were to go to war, he would be tied into a zongzi, he would never escape. "Evil thing, put your hands together," Zhenyao Xianjun said loudly, trembling through the 9 heavens and 10 earth. Under the boundless atmosphere, the black robe slowly recovered, and he seemed to adapt to this suppression quickly. Then, from under the wide hood, 2 dark purple lights suddenly appeared. Looking for death. Immortal King Zhenyao was angry and waved to cover him down. Void shocks, along with his shot, the other 9 veterans also shot together. The huge palms of the 10 directions that contained the meaning of supremacy came down. Facing these 10 giant palms, the black robe was alone, lonely and treacherous, and did not make any escape movements. He slowly raised his head, then his arms were in a gesture of supporting the sky, and he chose a hard shake. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, even the nirvana trembling to the point of unspeakable, and Jian Wushuang and others were knocked into the air by the sound wave, retreating thousands of feet. The boundless Qi luck faded in an instant, and the branches of Qi luck shattered. Okay. All the elders, Xianjun, were asking questions, and after a glance, he stared at the black robe. Under the boundless and supreme luck, the giant palms of the 10 directions that contained the meaning of supremacy did not cover it, but were abruptly caught by the black robe. The 10 big palms with light golden aura, cracked fine cracks. At the cracks, wisps of dark purple huamang like mist were covered. Zhenyao Xianjun looked dignified. He looked at the other 9 veterans, and then squeezed his right hand again and again, and suddenly patted the black robe. The 9 veterans Yan Jun didn't hesitate, and also slapped it. The 10-sided giant palm, which had been densely covered with cracks, seemed to have received some kind of blessing. The cracks were instantly repaired, and bright golden glow appeared. Under the giant palms of the 10 directions, the black robe, which was holding the sky, could not bear the weight, and instantly fell apart, and his body was crushed. Zhenyao's Yan Jun said in a deep voice, "You guys need to stay alive." The 9 veteran immortals simultaneously retracted their strength and stood with their hands behind them. Immediately afterwards, Zhenyao's Yan Jun jumped to the center of the boundless luck. His arms were broken, and the black robe sat on the ground, resisting the terrifying pressure brought by the luck. He frowned and said, "Who are you? Why do you want to destroy the sky?" Hei Pao said nothing, but slowly raised his head, shooting 2 cold glows from under the wide hood. Xianjun Zhanyao was slightly startled, and he couldn't see the face under the black robe from his realm. "The one who looks at the ciphertext, die." It was that sentence again, the black robe repeated, and then fell silent. "Who is watching the ciphertext?" Zhenyao's Xianjun continued to ask, but no matter how he asked, the black robe fell silent and said nothing. For some reason, subconsciously, he turned around and looked at Jian Wushuang, who was thousands of feet away. Jian Wushuang, who was struggling to untie the chains of the heavenly order on his body, hurriedly calmed down when he felt the gaze coming from him, and continued to observe his nose and heart. "It must be the trouble caused by this kid," Zhenyao's Yan Jun thought to himself, and then put aside these problems for the time being. Seeing this black robe that could even shake the 10 veterans Yan Jun, Zhenyao's Yan Jun didn't have the slightest support. He waved his arm, and suddenly the boundless luck began to condense into chains. There are 10 chains in total, and each chain is formed by the luck of a veteran, Xianjun, and binds the black robe together. Then Zhenyao's Xianjun took out a small cauldron from his waist and took the black robe directly into the cauldron. After all this was done, the void resumed its final state of nihilism. After looking back at Jian Wushuang, Zhenyao's Xianjun looked ahead. Back to heaven. The fairy cloud shrouded, and the force flowed and rose. Because it is so pure that it becomes a liquid source of derivation, it converges to become a torrent waterfall flowing in the fairy mountain sky stream. The cycle goes back and forth, endlessly. This is the supreme wonderland that one party can't speak arrogantly or look directly at it. Hidden in the misty clouds, Xiaoyuntai has never been stepped by the emperor for hundreds of millions of years. It is a relatively secret place in the whole heaven. At this moment, on the com platform, in the misty clouds, Jian Wushuang, who was tied into a zongzi by the order of heaven, said helplessly, "What are you talking about? I just don't understand." "Really don't understand?" Zhenyao's Yanjun squatted in front of him and said with a smile. Jian Wushuang said firmly, "I really don't understand. Even if you throw me into the sea of no edge, I still don't know what happened, and there is no result if you ask again. Good boy, you still don't speak at this time. Do you really want the emperor to speak in person?" A veteran with black eyebrows and white beards couldn't help but persuade him, "Explain as soon as possible. You know, destroy the universe to that extent, the consequences would be disastrous." Jian Wushuang hurriedly said, "Don't talk nonsense, I really didn't destroy that great sky. You have seen who destroyed it. You can confront him. You." The elder Xianjun with black eyebrows and white beards was suddenly angry and didn't know what to say. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 5097. Looking at Jian Wushuang, who was unable to make progress, even Zhenyao's Yanjun was quite a headache. If you don't eat the soft ones, you can't come with the hard ones. If you want to know some secrets, I'm afraid you have to dig from other Yangxian. Thinking of this, Zhenyao's Yanjun looked at the craftsman Shu Tuo and said, "Old man, you should always know something, right?" Shu Tuo shook his head without hesitation. "Everything happened too fast. Even if I want to know something, it's too late." Zhenyao's Yanjun offered a condition. "You speak out, and I will ask the emperor to return you a heaven that is more perfect than Sansuan Mountain." Shu Tuo shook his head, and then said nothing. "You old fellow, I see when you hold back," he said angrily. Nan Xian quickly put aside the relationship. "Don't look at me, I don't know anything, it's just a passing by Xianxian, it has nothing to do with me. Zhenyao Xianjun got up angrily and didn't ask anything at all. Immediately afterwards, the cloud and smoke around the Xiaoyuntai suddenly had a gilt color flowing over, full of a sensational trend. The veteran Xianjun's complexion changed slightly at the moment, and they all looked out of Xiaoyuntai with a serious face. A pure golden light broke through the layers of clouds and cast onto the huge dojo in Xiaoyuntai. Then, the two treasures stepped down the clouds and came to the platform of Xiaoyun. Seeing these two figures, Zhen Wushuang was quite speechless. The craftsman Shu Tuo was shocked, so he closed his eyes and stopped looking. Gongzi Jiao was both surprised and happy. Although Nan Xian had never been to the heavenly court, as Dian Immortal, he could naturally feel that kind of aura fluctuations, with incredible expressions in his eyes. As for the disciples of Sankun Mountain, they had already passed out, and they didn't even have a chance to see the true face of the emperor. Those who came were Zhen Wuyang and Yu Chang, the lord of the whole heaven. I have seen the emperor. Headed by Zhenyao Xianjun, the 10 veteran Xianjun saluted. Zhen Wuyang waved his hand, then slowly glanced at Zhen Wushuang and the others. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. How is the situation in the sky? Zhenyao Xianjun slightly nodded, returning to emperor. The situation is not very good, and 1/6 of the heaven has been beaten into nothingness. Zhen Wuyang's expression condensed. 1/6 of the heaven has been beaten into nothingness. It's true. They did it. I don't know at the moment. Zhenyao Xianjun looked rather embarrassed. However, the destroyers have been found. Upon hearing this, Zhen Wuyang looked at Zhen Wushuang again, with a deep and majestic voice. Zhen Wushuang, why is there you in the sky? Shouldn't you be in the 6-day realm? Zhen Wushuang's mouth trembled slightly, and then he said, I'm going to relax. Relief. Why didn't you go with Yang? Zhen Wuyang frowned slightly. Zhenyao Xianjun hurriedly said, Emperor, little emperor is the emperor, and should not walk around at will. Only then did Zhen Wuyang realize that the meaning was wrong, and after a light cough, he looked at Zhenyao Xianjun. Since the destroyer of the heavenly emperor has been found, let it out on the spot. He nodded, and then took off the small tripod around his waist and threw it into the air. In an instant, the great light of the Chinese Dingzhong burst out, and the chains of atmospheric transportation came out, and then a black robe fell on the ground. With the appearance of this black robe, the peaceful and quiet Xiaoyuntai quietly took up a dangerous atmosphere. At this moment, Zhen Wuyang and Yu Chang stared at the same time. The emperor's luck that belonged to the emperor came and directly suppressed the black robe. Bound by chains of atmospheric transport, and suppressed by the emperor's gas transport, the black robe that was originally strong enough to fight the peak Dian Immortal collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Zhen Wuyang condensed his eyes, waved his hand to lower the emperor's luck, and smashed the chains of the atmosphere on the black robe. Without the restraints, Hei robe got up directly, and an unspeakable treacherous aura burst out instantly. However, Zhen Wuyang just moved his palm to directly shatter the breath. The entire Xiaoyun typhoon was surging and dark clouds appeared. Zhen Wuyang looked solemn and stared at the black robe closely. After a long time, he said slowly, Where did you come from, and why would you destroy my big division? The black robe raised his head, and a dull and barren voice came from under his hood, peeping at the ciphertext, Death. Zhen Wuyang frowned, Are you from Tongtian Buddha realm? At this time, Yu Chang, who had not spoken, shook his head slightly. It is unlikely that they are monks in the world of Tongtian Buddhism. They are very cautious and rarely break into the Great Division. Indeed, they also don't have hair. Zhen Wuyang followed up with a teasing, and then solemnly, But, why can't he understand his realm cultivation? Isn't he a fairy? Peep at the ciphertext, Die. Hai Pao repeated the same words again. Peeping at the ciphertext. Zhen Wuyang looked directly at Zhen Wushuang, then waved his hand to carry him directly. What is a ciphertext? Did you go to Dalmatian to find a ciphertext? Zhen Wushuang was dumb, and immediately after the chains of luck on his body were wiped off, he stood in front of Zhen Wuyang and Yu Chang. I don't know too well, I haven't figured out any clues yet. The reason you went to Dalmatian is probably to find Shu Tuo to find some ciphertexts. Zhen Wuyang pointed out the crux of the problem. At this point, Jian Wushuang didn't want to hide too much. Yes, it's because of this. It is possible to destroy 1/6 of the world of Da Mitian into nothingness. I am afraid it is just something he can't do. Zhen Wuyang stared at him closely. Is it caused by your fighting? Jian Wushuang shook his head. With my strength, I just barely protect myself. Who is at war with him? Chang Fu. Chang Fu? Yes, he dragged the black robe at the cost of death. Zhen Wuyang frowned, which was bad news for him. Chang Fu is the 9-turned Dayan immortal who came out of the Wangu era. He has been following him for countless years and after countless blood battles, and finally opened up the Darciu, is the veteran hero of the heaven. But right now, the elders under his seat, Chang Fu, died silently. Slowly breathing out, Zhen Wuyang looked at Jian Wushuang and said, "Where did this black robe come from?" Regarding where the black robe came from, apart from Jian Wushuang, even Nan Xian and the craftsman Xu Tuo could not guess. As long as he didn't say it, no Yangxian would know where the black robe came from. But now, Jian Wushuang faintly realized that the heavenly character bone armor was not as simple as imagined. It is even out of control in a sense. So far, Jian Wushuang has been convinced that the ciphertext hidden in the bone armor of the Tianzi pattern is related to Xuani. But everything has not been solved. It is still confusing, even dangerous. What is the origin of the black robe in the bone armor of the sky? Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 5098. Why is there such a terrifying existence in Shen Yi's final secret Tianzi pattern bone armor? Moreover, even Emperor Zhen Wuyang could not detect the realm of that black robe. In what form did he exist in the bone armor of the sky character, and how many years did he exist? Everything seems to surface, but everything involves more, like a mess of thread. There is no way to start. Jian Wushuang was silent for a moment, and said, "I walked out of a bone armor." Bone armor? What bone armor? Zhen Wuyang looked solemnly. A bone armor that contains ciphertexts is very mysterious, but it has now been destroyed, he said, and this black-robed man came out of the bone armor. It was unbelievable to walk out of the bone armor with a black-robed man whose strength was comparable to that of the peak day immortal. You know, even the 9th-rank Dayan immortal is the closest to the great Emperor Dao, to feel the existence of the Emperor's luck, let alone the peak Dayan immortal. The peak Dayan immortal is already an extreme existence. They have found and have been immersed in their own avenue for countless years, almost equivalent to the existence of a half-step emperor. And who can seal such a pinnacle great Yangxian in a small bone armor? Or, he was sealed in it voluntarily. After hearing Jian Wushuang's remarks, Zhen Wuyang's eyes changed several times, and finally returned to calm. In other words, you take such a bone armor and go to Dami Tian to find the fairy who can untie the ciphertext above? Jian Wushuang nodded. Yes, but I didn't expect that there would be such an existence in that bone armor. Zhen Wuyang Qi is extremely. It is purely nonsense. If there is more terrible existence in that bone armor, what do you do? Is it to ruin my big division? I'll settle the account with you later. Zhen Wuyang left this sentence and looked at the black robe. Then, the chains condensed by the Emperor's air luck directly confined the limbs of the black robe, and hung it in the center of the Xiaoyuntai, hanging in the air. Emperor Wei Huang, so that no fairy dared to look directly. Zhen Wuyang walked slowly in front of the black robe, and the Emperor's eyes showed supreme might. Where did you come from, and why do you stay in a bone armor? The clouds are rolling in the clouds, and the wind is blowing suddenly. There was a dead silence in the Xiaoyuntai, and the black robe said nothing. Zhen Wuyang frowned. If you don't tell me, do you know what the consequences will be? Dewey descended, completely covering the black robe. Under the imperial prestige, a large amount of dark purple mist overflowed from under the black robe and quickly dissipated. Seeing this kind of energy that is not Yanli but equally tyrannical, Zhen Wuyang waved his hand to pick up a ray of dark purple huamang. Such a tiny strand of dark purple huamang pulsated in his palm, and it lasted for a long time, but it seemed to be extremely repulsive and eventually dissipated. Zhen Wuyang closed his emperor's eyes tightly and seemed to feel the source of this light. The Xiaoyuntai was extremely silent, and no one dared to speak. And at this time, Yu Chang looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile, and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Little friend Jian, you are in trouble this time." Jian Wushuang smiled bitterly. "I never thought of this kind of result. It's okay, the emperor will have a way." Yu Chang said with a smile, "Little friend, what adventure do you have when you go this time?" He was startled slightly, and then said, "No, all that is left is the thrilling, and Chi Yu has never met before." When Yu Chang heard the words, he nodded, and said no more. Jian Wushuang secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and at the same time faintly confused. Could it be discovered so soon? He quickly suppressed this idea again. The Boyang vase was the product of the emperor and the sheep. It could hide the heavens, but how could it not hide a pinnacle great emperor? Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang suddenly opened his eyes, and secretly became anxious. "No, it's okay, they won't fight, right?" For a long time, the Poyang bottle has served as his pocket of treasures. No matter what the treasures he has obtained, it is stuffed into the Poyang bottle together with his whole cards. And the dark blue diamond crystal that stored the black robe old man was also easily stuffed into the Boyang bottle by him. As the sword spirit in Yu Chang's emperor sword, the black robe old man must have participated in battles after another. In other words, the heavenly court where the three emperors were destroyed is very likely to have Yu Chang's participation. This is a blood feud that cannot be reconciled, and there is absolutely no possibility of reconciliation. If you really fight in the Boyang vase, the three emperors who have only the true soul will definitely fall behind, and may even be defeated. Regardless of the situation, this was something Jian Wushuang didn't want to see. However, with two real emperors around him, Jian Wushuang couldn't open the Boyang bottle to check it, so he could only secretly worry. At this moment, Zhen Wuyang opened his eyes, and a touch of golden light appeared in the emperor's eyes. He seemed to have realized something, frowned again. After a while, Zhen Wuyang said, "You don't belong to the big division domain, or even this era. Who are you?" In a word, even Yu Chang was solemn. The weight of this sentence is really too heavy and contains too much content. From that long time to the barren Wangu era, and swept through the heavens of Zhen Wuyang, if you don't know the meaning of this sentence. The Wangu era is an era that I can't even imagine. There is even an era that is even more distant than the Wangu era. And the black robe at the moment has actually existed since a more ancient time. Only then did Jian Wushuang discover that he had far underestimated the existence of the sky character bone armor, and at the same time he was filled with an unspeakable emotion. Has the news of Master Xuani become secret in an era where even time and years have no meaning? Who is he? What did you do that fell to where it is now? Jian Wushuang was shocked in his heart, and at the same time looked solemnly at the black robe, eager to learn some news from him. However, under the suppression of the emperor's luck, the black robe was on the verge of extinction again. "You don't belong to this era, who are you?" Zhen Wuyang took the trouble to repeat this question again. The black robe, who had been silent for a long time, raised his head at this moment, and shot two dark purple cold glows from under the wide hood. That was his gaze, looking at Zhen Wuyang. Then the old hoarse voice sounded again, peeping at the ciphertext, "Die. Except for this sentence, don't you have anything else?" Zhen Wuyang frowned. "If you are willing to say it, I will let you go once, so that you no longer suffer, and let you go." Chapter 5099. Immediately afterwards, he changed his head again. "If you still don't say anything, I have many ways to make you more painful than staying in that little bone armor 1,000 times, 10,000 times. However, Hai Pao turned a deaf ear to what he said, still stubbornly repeating the sentence, "The one who looks at the ciphertext, die." Zhen Wuyang was angry and directly waved his arms. In an instant, the chains condensed by the emperor's luck, lashed against the black robe fiercely. With a whip, the whole body of the black robe instantly cracked a hideous crack. Then, the 9 chains fell down together. The dark purple huamang that was enough to cover the sky was disintegrating, and the body of the black robe disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. "If you don't say it will not do you any good, if you say it, it will feel better," Zhen Wuyang said slowly. Even at the edge of life and death, the black robe still repeated the previous sentence. "The one who looks at the ciphertext, die. Death." Zhen Wuyang sipped, and a total of 9 chains fell together. It is foreseeable that once all the chains are dropped, the black robe will inevitably disappear. Jian Wushuang's heart was stunned, and he wanted to save the black robe. But Yu Chang took a step ahead of him. He waved his hand to stop the 9 daimonic Qi Luck chain and stood in front of Zhen Wuyang. Yu Chang, what are you? Zhen Wuyang frowned in confusion. Yu Chang arched his hands and said, going back to the emperor, he can't die. This involves a lot of things. If you act rashly, it might be detrimental to many things. Zhen Wuyang frowned, thinking about the meaning of his words, and then said after a moment, it's okay, imprison him. When Yu Chang heard the words, he nodded, then turned to look at the black robe, stretched out his hand and stroked it. Layers of black and blue aura appeared. Then he was wrapped in a black robe and put it back into his sleeve. As the black robe disappeared, the unspeakable depressive breath disappeared completely. The entire Xiaoyuntai was restored to the state of Yunjuanyunshu. He didn't get any useful news from Heipao's mouth, which made Zhen Wuyang quite upset. He turned to look at Jian Wushuang, only resentment was left in the emperor's eyes. Then what ciphertext is hidden in the bone armor of Rausch, so that you can't even ask the news? Nothing, mainly because when we were about to see the answer, the black robe rushed out and destroyed the bone armor. Zhen Wuyang's voice rose sharply, that is to say, after having tossed for so long, and ruined me half of the sky, I finally got nothing? Jian Wushuang was quite embarrassed. You can say so. Zhen Wuyang was extremely angry and turned his head to look at the craftsman Shu Tuo, this emperor must listen to the truth. What is the ciphertext on the bone armor? The craftsman Shu Tuo slowly opened his eyes. Hui Dijuan, indeed, as the little friend Jian said, Shu Tuo doesn't even know it. When Zhen Wuyang heard this, he felt nothing to say. At this time, Yu Chang said, every dust in this big division, every celestial plane has gone through countless catastrophes to form the current prosperity. And the significance of the existence of the heaven is to protect the countless horizons of heaven and eternal prosperity, and protect the countless heavenly arrogances toward their own avenue. However, this unnecessary battle has turned nearly 100 heavenly planes and endless creatures into dust, and everything in it may be destroyed. This is beyond what the heavenly court can tolerate. The last Dayan immortal who erased nearly 10 celestial planes has been imprisoned in the sea of boundlessness and endured endless nothingness. Now, your damage to Tianyu far exceeds that of any previous war, and punishment is inevitable. After the sentence was pronounced, Yu Chang looked at Zhen Wuyang. At this moment, the disciples of Sansuan Mountain, the master craftsman Shu Tuo, Nan Xian, and young master Jiao all looked extremely nervous. In the sea of no edge, the punishment of the emperor is the most serious punishment. Once these responsibilities fall, it is almost equivalent to a death sentence. At this time, Jian Wushuang took a step forward and said, this battle was caused by me alone. They are all victims. It has nothing to do with them. I will bear it myself. Who said they should be punished? Zhen Wuyang looked at him and said in a deep voice, this emperor will only fine you today, heavy punishment. Willing to take it. Jian Wushuang arched his hands and said firmly. Zhen Wuyang said in a deep voice, you said, what kind of punishment do you want? Any punishment is fine. Okay, happy boy. The emperor will punish you to go to the wasteland to move bricks. Move bricks. Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. Yes, let me go to Dahuang and stay honestly for 10,000 years. 1,000 years. The blazing and warm Yanli disappeared, and the clouds of Yunjuanyunshu gradually disappeared, replaced by low black clouds. Thunder and lightning, thick as a dragon, brewed in the dark clouds, and accompanied by a huge vortex. It was a scene of destruction. It was in these void clouds that even Yang Xian dared not wait any longer, and there was a giant bird that spread its wings and jumped. Ukanshu. This giant bird is completely black and blue, and under its wings, it can even cover several celestial planes under its wings. It is so huge that even the dragon-like lightning in the dark clouds is extremely small. On top of this giant bird's beast, there are 2 figures sitting upright. One of them is Yu Chang and the other is Jian Wushuang. Even Yanli can swallow the frozen gang wind raging in the void. Even Jian Wushuang felt a deep chill. This is a void that has never been seen before, And the heavenly plane does not exist at all, not even a trace of derivation, and some are only barren in nothingness. This is a very dark void, even the stars have not been born, except for the burst of lightning, there is no other color. Sitting on the bird's head of the giant bird, Jian Wushuang no longer knew where he was. The giant bird can span hundreds of celestial planes between the wings, and it can be inferred that it has been completely far away from the center of the big division. Could it be that the so-called Great Desolation is the border of Darciu? Jian Wushuang trembled in his heart, as he thought. At this moment, Yu Chang suddenly looked back and looked at him with a warm complexion. That's a good guess. The so-called Da Huang is indeed the border of Darciu. Jian Wushuang felt a shock in his heart. How do you know what I think in my heart? Yu Chang smiled slightly. Of course it is a guess. If you are not thinking about this problem, it would be strange. Jian Wushuang was silent. He didn't understand why these emperors could always see what other Yangxian was thinking. After a while, Yu Chang spoke first. We are now far away from the center of Darciu and rushed to the border. He was a little stunned when he heard the words. It took 20,000 years to unknowingly it has been nearly 20,000 years since the divine power universe. And for nearly 20,000 years, he has been surrounding Darciu. Chapter 5100. The vast expanse, including countless celestial planes of the Great Division, even began to make Jian Wushuang doubts. Darciu, is there really a boundary? Now that he got the exact news from Yu Chang, this made Jian Wushuang feel slightly worried. It's just that Dacu is so vast and vast, so in what way should the real ultimate development be displayed before his eyes? And Xian Yi, Lao Zun, and the others, where and in what form should exist in this ultimate development? Just when Jian Wushuang was a little startled, Yu Chang said leisurely, you have also seen that not all celestial voids can be born out of planes. The more you reach the boundary, the less planes there will be. And the boundary of the big division domain is the limit that the emperor can expand to, and there is no power here, and it is meaningless to continue to expand. Therefore, we set the boundary of the great division as the great wilderness. A brief language sketched out the outline of Dacu for Jian Wushuang. Let him know something. Then, he got up, faced the wind that was enough to make the fairy body tremble, and looked at the endless nothingness through the layers of dark clouds. Outside of the big division domain, is it even more expansive? It may disappoint you. Outside the great division, there is an endless wilderness. Even Dian Immortal will be lost in the wilderness and eventually become dust. Jian Wushuang couldn't believe it. Could it be that there is only an endless great famine outside the Darciu? Of course not, Yu Chang smiled. Although the great wilderness is endless, it has a boundary after all. Beyond that boundary, there are many large domains that are the same as those of the Great Division. Jian Wushuang's heart was hot, and his silent heart felt a little restless. With infinite existence, there are infinite possibilities. Everything is within reach. At this moment, what did he think of, and looked towards Yu Changdao? Uncle Yu, I can ask, what is the name of the nearest big domain next to the big division domain? Yu Chang looked at him and said with a smile, ask what this does. Do you want to leave Darciu? No. I'm just curious to ask. This is not something that can't be said, but the Yangxian known in Darciu is indeed poorly understood. The big domain adjacent to the big division domain. It is the infinite border of the great wilderness, and that big domain is called the Tongtian Buddha realm. Jian Wushuang was taken aback. Through the heavens. Why, do you know there? No. I don't know. I just think it's a bit novel. Yu Chang looked ahead. It seemed to be reminiscing. Where? I wondered once. All the monk capitals are more stubborn and extreme. They gave me some not-so-good perceptions. It's a coincidence. The neighboring Darciu is actually the world of Tongtian Buddha. Jian Wushuang was shocked secretly. The experience of the past reappeared in his mind. Although he had never been to the so-called Tongtian Buddha realm, the Tongtian Buddha realm had some contact with him unconsciously. In the Sand Demon Cave, encountering a sea of blood, the cause and effect are killed off. Shao Qing, the lord of the Sand Demon Cave, surrendered to his death, saying that the only way to resolve the catastrophe was to go to the world of Tongtian Buddha. Only then did Jian Wushuang have some connection with the Buddha realm that Tongtian. Now that 20,000 years have passed, the Tongtian Buddha realm, which is about to be sealed in memory, has once again come to mind. After all, do you want to go to the world of Tongtian Buddha? Jian Wushuang hesitated in his heart, and at the same time worried about the causal massacre he was carrying. The so-called cause and effect massacre is a crack. Although it is not too harmful, it is a hidden danger after all. This hidden danger will continue to grow with the owner, and eventually reach the point where it cannot be ignored. At present, Jian Wushuang has nothing to do with this big killing, but he knows that if it is not cleared in time, his mellow spirit will be completely destroyed. So he can't ignore any clues about the world of Tongtian Buddha. Because of a woman, a large-scale killing and robbery made Jian Wushuang and Tongtian Buddha realm contact. Of course, these are things that Yu Chang didn't know, and naturally he wouldn't think about it. Yu Chang continued to speak, so, I don't have a good understanding of the world of Tongtian Buddhism, including emperors who are more repulsive there. When he said this, he looked at Jian Wushuang and continued, so what you have to do when you come to this border wasteland is to move bricks and move bricks hard. Ah, no, isn't it really moving bricks? There can be fakes, the emperor has no jokes. I don't know how long it has passed, how long it has transitioned into the void, and even the years have no meaning, until Jian Wushuang is numb, everything has new progress. Ahead is the great wilderness, Yu Chang said. Jian Wushuang's heart shook, then he got up and looked forward. He saw that the originally extremely dark void had a dim light and a solid earth. Wait, the earth? How can there be a solid ground in this vast wilderness that is so barren that even dust can't exist? However, Jian Wushuang was truly convinced when the giant bird below him steadily landed on the solid ground. Here, the boundary of Darciu, which belongs to the void of the great wilderness, actually exists in the form of the earth. The earth is boundless, extending to every emptiness in sight. The giant bird standing steadily on the earth raised its head and sighed, then turned into a palm-sized chasing bird and flew into Yu Chang's palm and disappeared. No, not land. The sword with the soles of the feet on the ground did not change slightly in both sides, and soon I noticed that the ground under my feet was not the real ground, but was composed of dense bones. Yu Chang glanced at him quite appreciatively, and then said, yes, there is really no land on this wild border. This solid ground is actually paved by the bones of Dingxiu, Xianxian, and Dianxian. Are these all the bones of the cultivators and immortal Yang in the Great Division? Jian Wushuang's eyes were solemn. There are too many to an unimaginable level. How many bones of monks and immortals are needed to cover the vast wilderness and emptiness? Yu Chang nodded, as if narrating a small matter. It is indeed all the bones of the monks in the Great Division and the bones of the Yangxian, of which the bones of the Yangxian accounted for 70%. Jian Wushuang was shocked and completely covered the border of this great wilderness. What kind of battle he had experienced in the age of Wangu? Does the establishment of a heavenly court require so many killings to become immortal? He also understood a little bit why there are so few fairy cultivators in Darciu nowadays, and Dian Celestial being almost non-existent. Multi-source app. Mimi reading the reason may be traced back to the Battle of the Emperors in the ancient age. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 5101. WN Dao Sword Sovereign. It has been nearly 20,000 years since he reached the ultimate Yanhuan, and in the 20,000 years, Jian Wushuang also knew a lot about those ancient secrets that were unknown to Dian Immortal. The Wangu era belonged to the era of coexistence of all emperors, and countless stunning arrogances came into being, creating their own supreme road. Just what Jian Wushuang knew, there were 5 emperors. The 5 emperors are the 5 heavenly courts, coexisting in the big division domain, dividing domains to rule. Yang Jun, Su He, Dao Gong, Feng Hua, Liu Crou. And these 5 emperors can be regarded as representatives in the big division, and there are several emperors. The Wangu era was a brilliant world, with so many emperors, let alone Dianxian. However, With the emergence of Zhen Wuyang, everything eventually turned into dust. Just what Zhen Wushuang knew, nearly 10 emperors died in Zhen Wuyang's hands. And Yangxian, Dianxian seems to be countless. He also understood why there were very few bones of Xianxian left in the Daci domain. It turned out that all the bones were pushed into the wilderness to fill the border of the wilderness. This is a dusty secret, whether it is known or not, it has not much meaning. Stepping on the ground paved with the infinite bones of Yangxian, Zhen Wushuang walked slowly along with Yu Chang. The great wasteland is endless, and the bones under this foot are also endless. The emperor is now punishing you to the great wasteland. It is really helpless, otherwise it will not be enough to warn or convince the crowd. Furthermore, the emperor asked you to come to this great wilderness, which is also the result of our joint discussions. There are 2 reasons for this. One is to warn the public, and the other is that this great wasteland really needs to be repaired. Repair? Zhen Wushuang looked at him, a little puzzled. Yu Chang nodded. It's true, this vast wasteland, it's time to fix it. Zhen Wushuang felt a little uncomprehending. Could it be that there will be an immortal existence in this place where even the power of extension can't exist? It is indeed impossible for Yangxian to come here. Even Dianxian will never set foot in this great famine, but there are always exceptions in everything. As Yu Chang said, he waved his arms, and suddenly mad dust was rolled up on this fairy bone road. With the sudden rise of Quangchen, some subtle auras began to appear on the Shenggu road. Zhen Wushuang subconsciously looked at the immortal bone road under his feet, only to realize that a pair of footprints appeared. What are these footprints? It's trouble. Yu Chang smiled slightly and said, apart from those monk heads, you are the first Yangxian to come to the great wilderness. Those monk heads? Why did they appear in the great wilderness? Zhen Wushuang couldn't believe it. Yu Chang said, they used their feet to measure the earth, and they tried to save all the eternal immortals, and went to their heavenly Buddha realm to worship. The most important point is that they regard this great wilderness as a place of experience, and they will come forward one after another. Zhen Wushuang was a little dumb when he heard the words. The idea is really unique, so you should use it as a place of experience. Yanli cannot be retained at all, and it is boundless. I am afraid that even Dianxian will be lost here. It is more appropriate to compare this great wilderness to a tomb. Yes, even I never thought that they would have such a firm determination. Yu Chang said, and then looked at him, Wu Shuang, all you have to do is to stay here and reinforce the barriers of the great wilderness. Stay here for 10,000 years. Zhen Wushuang smiled bitterly. 10,000 years is a period of retreat for the immortals and even the top cultivators, not long at all. But for Zhen Wushuang, it was different. His growth rate was too fast, and 10,000 years was enough for him to do too many things. Right now, he was going to be exiled in the wilderness for 10,000 years, which greatly restricted any of his actions. Yu Chang seemed to see the sadness in his eyes, and smiled. 10,000 years is not a long time, but it is just a rhetoric. If the emperor didn't say that at the time, I am afraid that the second emperor would never let it go. After all, it was destroyed. It's his greatness. In 1,000 years, I will come to Da Huang to pick you up, but of course it depends on your performance. Zhen Wushuang secretly breathed a sigh of relief. 1,000 years of time is not too far away for him. Quandang has experienced this great wilderness. Yes, what do I do next in this great famine? Of course it is building the wall to reinforce the barrier. Ah, it turned out to be really moving bricks. Of course. As they continued to talk, the 2 figures moved forward at a gentle speed, until a wall that almost halved the void appeared before they stopped. It's not so much a wall, it's a real fairy trail. It is as if the road to the bones of the bones is rolled up by some supreme power. It rises high, almost isolating the entire void, and it is divided into 2 even if it is Dian. Standing here is like the supreme under the fairy trail-like barriers. Everyone will feel their own insignificance. Here is the real border of Daciu, and it is also the edge of the great wasteland. Yu Chang looked at Zhen Wushuang, who was already fascinated, and said in a slow voice, and what you have to do now is to repair this border barrier a little bit. Xiao, repair here? Zhen Wushuang swallowed his throat with some difficulty, and bitterness flashed in his eyes. Yes. Yu Chang nodded slightly. This border barrier was built by me and the Emperor. It can stop all enemies and will not be destroyed for endless years. However, on the other side of the Great Wilderness, those monk heads from the world of Tongtian Buddhism used certain methods to damage the border barrier, allowing them to enter the Great Division. What you have to do now, Wushuang, is to completely seal the border barriers and block all enemies from the wilderness. Jian Wushuang nodded. Okay, I will. At this time, Yu Chang put a smile away and became a little serious. Remember Wushuang, this is a punishment. This is the most dangerous place in the entire Daci region, even Dian Immortal is nothing here. At the moment you set foot on the border of the wilderness, you have to make any preparations. You are not only facing the weakness of the immortal body, but also the enemies hidden in the wilderness. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed slightly. Enemies in the Great Wilderness? There are other immortals in the Great Wilderness? Yu Chang nodded. To be precise, they are no longer evangelists, they are just a certain obsession, wandering and lost in the wilderness. After I leave, any evangelists and monk heads that come out of the Great Wilderness will be your enemies. All you have to do is to completely block all enemies outside the border, and don't miss one. Chapter 5102. Wan Dao Sword Sovereign Yu Chang left. After entrusting Jian Wushuang for a while, he left. Only Jian Wushuang was left on this fairy bone road, the border of the Great Wilderness. He stood in place, feeling the endless aura of ancient times, and at the same time thinking about the meaning of Yu Chang's words. In this Great Wilderness, can there be a fairy cultivating approach and walking in it? And what kind of existence is the so-called Tongtian Buddha realm outside the Great Wilderness? And those guys actually use the end of the Great Wasteland as part of their own trials? Jian Wushuang thought of the great monks he had seen in the Sand Demon Cave, and he also got some news from the discussion forum with Kong Lun. The heads of monks who haunt the Sand Demon Cave are indeed from the world of Tongtian Buddha. Moreover, after experiencing the incident in the Sand Demon Cave, Jian Wushuang had no favors with the monk heads, especially the few Dian immortals. But only the monk Kongluan, Jian Wushuang had some feelings for him. He gained a lot from the conversation under the Blood Sea. All in all, in the world of Tongtian Buddhism outside of the Great Wilderness, Jian Wushuang didn't have much favor. After roughly clarifying some clues to the conclusion, Jian Wushuang began to walk forward. The boundless wilderness, without borders, everything seems to be shrouded in dense dust, without a heavenly plane, without a big sun star. Yes, it's just dim and gloomy. What Yu Chang said was right. Even if Dian Immortal came here, he would eventually be lost. But Jian Wushuang did not have anything unusual. His mind, spirit and thoughts had long been melded to a terrifying degree. For him, Da Huang was actually a good place for cultivation. Stepping on the Shenggu Road, Jian Wushuang looked at the boundary barrier that divided the void in two, and quickly understood what Yu Chang wanted him to repair. In the center of this vast border barrier, there is a gap, only a line. It's like being torn apart by external force, making the boundary barrier no longer complete. This gap seemed to have only one line, but when Jian Wushuang really went to check the gap, he knew what the abyss was. The entire boundary barrier is too vast and infinite, so even if only one line is broken, it is an irreparable crack. Jian Wushuang stood in the center of this crack, unavoidably getting big for a while. This rift is too vast. I am afraid that it may not be able to completely fill it if it is packed into thousands of celestial planes. Today's Jian Wushuang, it is not difficult to move an ordinary heavenly plane in the Daci domain. But the difficulty lies in the fact that this is a great wasteland, and everything is barren. There is no celestial plane, and there is no growth force to supplement, only rely on oneself to slowly restore the growth force. In this way, repairing this border barrier is tantamount to a disaster. Since there was no Tianyu plane to use, Jian Wushuang turned to look at the Shenggu Road under his feet. This boundary barrier, like the Shenggu Road, was built with the bones of Yangxian, but if you want to repair it, you can only fill it with the Shenggu Road. Do what he said. After Jian Wushuang roughly calculated the gap between the cracks in the boundary barrier, he suddenly released his own power. This great famine, I don't know how many billions of years of time there has been no development. Therefore, when Jian Wushuang released his power, the entire endless void and Dahuang directly burst into vortexes. The thick dust was absorbed by the vortex, but hovering in the void, making everything tremble. Thunder and lightning that is as thick as a dragon looms in the eddy current, and may tear the void and fall at any time. Here, there is no heavenly order, everything is chaotic, the original state. Then, in the next section, thousands of thunder and lightning that resembled a giant dragon, all blasted towards Jian Wushuang, who exuded power. Boom! Even the Shenggu road trembled, and the fragments of the fairy bones became a fan. As for Jian Wushuang, who resisted the sky thunder with his body, he was severely blasted into the heart of the earth. These heavenly thunders could not have much influence on Jian Wushuang, who possessed the immortal body, but they still made him embarrassed to the extreme. When the thunder and lightning subsided, he walked out of the heart of the earth quite embarrassed. No, don't you have to be hacked even to release Yanli? Jian Wushuang was a little puzzled. He decided to try again. The majestic and surging force once again flowed in the meridians and escaped. But this time, it did not trigger the void vision. Jian Wushuang quickly understood that the original vision was caused by an accident. However, in this great wasteland, it is indeed impossible to condense and derive power, and it is a completely barren land. After thinking about it, Jian Wushuang directly set about repairing the boundary barrier. Since the heavenly plane was not born in this great wilderness, he could only start to cut off the road of immortal bones and use the piled bones to fill the gaps between the boundary barriers. The invisible sword quietly condenses Jian Wushuang, rises into the void, and then cuts it down with a single sword. Rumble. Shangulu was cut open by a crack, and then under the cutting of the invisible sword, a square trace was cut out at the center of Shangulu. Then, Jian Wushuang put away the invisible sword, and his figure also fell on the road of Xian bone. He suddenly stomped his foot, and in an instant, the Shenggu road was sinking and shaking, and a square roadblock the size of a sacred mountain rose directly from the ground. Jian Wushuang's arms were supporting the sky, and he directly held up the roadblock the size of a sacred mountain, stacked in the center of the boundary barrier. Although the roadblock is bigger than the sacred mountain, it is as small as dust when compared with the cracks in the boundary. But Jian Wushuang didn't care about these, silently began to carry out the next move. In this way, in this vast wilderness, a figure tirelessly cuts the road of immortal bones, and at the same time piles the cut roadblocks the size of a mountain in the gap between the boundary barriers. In the border wilderness, there is no concept of time, everything is in a primitive state of chaos. An immortal with a weak mind and spirit will be lost in this. There is only one figure, doing his own thing firmly, constantly mending the gaps in the boundary. My big companion, where do you think Wushuang will be now? I heard that Demaxian has been seriously damaged. The cloud smoke curls up, and the heavenly palace lies quietly among the clouds, which is quite mysterious. In a warm pavilion, Xiao Dejuan leaned against the window, looking at the swimming sea of clouds with some wonder. The purple-robed old man who had been standing behind him looked up at him and said, "Your Highness, you have already passed." Xiao Dejuan returned to his senses, looked at him sideways and said in a condensed voice, "Why, can't I even say this now?" Chapter 5103. Wn Dao Sword Sovereign. The thin purple robe bowed his head and nodded, and said in a steady voice, "His Royal Highness is the prince, and these should not be issues that the prince should consider." Xiao Dijun's voice rose sharply, "Then what should I consider? Should the emperors kill each other?" He was silent, and said after a moment, "I can't influence His Highness' judgment, but His Highness should be considered for the future." "Okay, I see." Xiao Dijun was rather impatient, and a lonely flash in his eyes. The thin purple robe continued, "His Royal Highness, don't rely too much on Jian Wushuang. You must know that he is not dependent on His Highness. He has his own purpose. I don't think he will be restrained by any immortal. Once he finds his own way, it's not far from leaving." Xiao Dijun couldn't bear it. "Enough, go out." But he did not leave, and continued to say, "In order to prevent your Highness from going on like this, I have already met the Emperor and asked the Emperor to send a great heaven official for His Highness, and he will be able to come soon." Boom. Xian Chuang was directly shot to pieces by Xiao Dejuan. He stood in the warm pavilion, angrily to the extreme. What are you talking about? Let the emperor send me a great heaven official. You don't know my heaven official is Jian Wushuang? The thin purple robe looked calm. Jian Wushuang doesn't want to be a heavenly official of His Highness, and he is not moistened by the blood of the emperor, so he is not a heavenly official of His Highness. Okay, if you have you, then I have to take a good look. How long does that great faculty live under me? After leaving these last words, Xiao Dejuan left Nuan Pavilion straight away. The thin purple robe slowly turned around, a touch of firmness flashed in his eyes. In the endless wilderness, under the borderless barriers. At this moment, in the gap like the abyss of the sky, there are millions of square roadblocks like sacred mountains. Each roadblock is comparable to a sacred mountain, and millions of sacred mountains are stacked on top of each other, and it has long been impossible to imagine its grandeur. But in this way, compared with the border barriers, they are as small as dust. In the center of the crack in the boundary barrier, on top of a million sacred mountain-like fairy bones, sat a free and easy figure. He is Jian Wushuang. In a very short period of time, the boundary crack was filled with an edge. Although it is not a big deal, it is quite good. Looking at the still unimaginable cracks, Jian Wushuang was already thinking about how to plug the cracks the fastest. If the Shenggu Road was cut out like a sacred mountain to fill it up as it is now, I am afraid that it would not be possible to plug the boundary cracks in 1,000 years. What should I do to quickly repair the cracks? Or should I try to push with Wushuang Kendo? Jian Wushuang thought to himself, but soon all his ideas were rejected by him. In this great wasteland, there can be no generative power born at all, and this means that he can't draw generative power from the void. However, Wushuang Sword Dao is extremely depleted of power. Once the immortal body's recovery cannot make up for the loss, then he will be extremely passive. Jian Wushuang would never do such a risky move. What's more, here is the border of the wilderness full of unknown desolation. No one knows what exactly exists here, not to mention that beyond this border barrier, there is an even more endless and dangerous famine. So Jian Wushuang still acted honestly according to the previous method. With a sword down, thousands of sword intents surged, and then every sword intent seemed to give birth to spiritual wisdom, spontaneously cutting the fairy bone road at the fastest speed. Then Jian Wushuang shook the ground and piled the roadblocks into the cracks in the road boundary. I am afraid that even he himself had never thought that Wushuang Kendo would be used to do these things one day. The sacred mountain-like roadblocks are piled up in the boundary cracks, and the sacred mountain-like roadblocks are actually the corpses of a fairy. Countless bones of Yangxian finally lay in the great wilderness, becoming a part of the ancient barren. Jian Wushuang also finally understood that Mingming Xianxian had already transcended the order of heaven and became an immortal existence. Why is there so sparse Xianxian in Daciu? It turns out that those Xianxian from the ancient times have long been turned into dead bones and discarded in the wilderness. It was extremely boring to repair the border in this great wilderness. Originally Jian Wushuang thought that he would encounter injustice, but never thought that this great wilderness would not even have any fluctuations. If nothing happens, he will not encounter a catastrophe in just 1,000 years. And when Jian Wushuang repeatedly moved the bricks, something unexpected happened suddenly. Under the fairy bone road that has been dug deep gully, the pure Wushuang sword intent is even harder to dig down, as if it has touched some restrictions, so it is difficult to make an inch. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly, with a bad premonition in his heart. He knows the point where Wushuang Kendo's sword intent is tyrannical, and it is precisely because of that bad premonition will grow stronger. Could it be that there is hidden under this fairy bone road what? Jian Wushuang quickly walked down from the void and came to the edge of the pothole dug out of deep gully. Through the layers of celestial bones, his eyes turned to the deepest part of the pit. But at the same time, a thick black smoke that could not be ignored was like a black dragon, suddenly gushing out from the deepest part of the pothole. Even Jian Wushuang couldn't ignore this kind of energy that burst out in an instant. The black smoke gushes out, covering the sky instantly, making the void even more extremely dark. Due to the surging and rising of black smoke, a vortex once again appeared above the void. The more violent vortex was spinning, echoing with the black smoke, and it seemed that a supreme punishment was brewing. Jian Wushuang secretly said a bad sound. Without thinking about it, he directly released the invisible sword and slashed towards the black smoke pillar like a black dragon. Sneer. Like tearing brocade and silk, the black smoke was cut off from it forcibly, and finally dissipated in the void. But Jian Wushuang did not relax his vigilance. He did not think that the black smoke would disappear like this. What is it that emits black smoke? Is it some kind of prohibition? You know, this fairy bone road in the great wilderness was formed by Zhen Wuyang and Yu Chang hand in hand in that ancient time, and its span of time is unimaginable. If there is a certain restriction under this fairy bone road, I am afraid that once it is born, it will inevitably cause some kind of catastrophe on this fairy bone road. Jian Wushuang frowned. He never thought that digging a road would actually dig a catastrophe. Immediately afterwards, the black smoke that was cut off unexpectedly spewed out again, and with an unimaginable aura, covered the entire fairy bone road. This must be a disaster. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.